Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you and call to order the Board of Directors meeting on Wednesday, April the 5th, 2023. And are there any additional agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none, I will now read a motion that this committee is to sit as a hearing board. That the LPRCA Board of Directors, the motion is that the LPRCA Board of Directors does now sit as a hearing board. Need a mover and a seconder, Rainey and Mike. Are there any opposed? Then I'm going to ask Dana to please read off the roll. Pardon? That's carried. Yes. I'll say it afterwards.
No, we need that. Spring line and. All righty. Shelley Ann Bentley. Here. Dave Barris.
Here.
Doug Brenton.
Here.
Robert Chambers.
Here.
Mike Columbus.
Here.
Thomas Shelley.
Here.
Stuart Patterson.
Present.
Christian Passam.
Here.
Rainey Weisler. Here. Peter Eatman.
Here.
And Mr. John Schultman.
Here.
Everybody's here.
We are now going to conduct a hearing under section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act in respect of an application by Darlene Vanderpool for permission to construct a structure at 125 Ordnance Ave, Turkey Point, Norfolk County. The authority has adopted regulations under section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, which require the permission of the authority for development within an area regulated by the authority in order to ensure no adverse effect on the control of flooding, erosion, dynamic beaches, or pollution or conservation of land, or to permit alteration to a shoreline or water course or interference with a wetland. The staff has reviewed this proposed work, and a copy of the staff report has been given to the applicant and the board. The applicant was invited to file materials in response to the staff report, a copy of which has also been provided to the board. The Conservation Authority Act, section 28, section 12 provides that permission required under a regulation made under clause 1B or C shall not be refused or granted subject to conditions unless the person requesting permission has been given the opportunity to require a hearing before the authority. In holding this hearing, the authority board is to determine whether or not a permit is to be issued with or without conditions. In doing so, we can only consider the application in the form that is before us. The staff report such evidence as may be given and the submissions to be made on behalf of the applicant. Only information disclosed prior to the hearing is to be presented at the hearing. The proceedings will be conducted according to the Statutory Powers Procedure Act. Under section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act, a witness may refuse to answer any question on the ground that the answer may tend to incriminate the person or may tend to establish his or her liability to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or of any person. The procedure in general shall be informal without the evidence before it being given under oath or affirmation. As the hearing proceeds, the procedures listed in the hearing procedure summary provided may be relaxed or abbreviated for efficiency. The authority may ask questions of witnesses for clarification at any time. If the applicant has any questions to ask of the hearing board or the authority representative, they must be directed to the chair of the board. Leanne, please make the introductions and then proceed with your report.
So we're just going to restart. We had a little issue with the network connection, but we believe that will be fixed right now. So I'd like to introduce to the hearing board Darlene Vanderpool and our agent Len Gerard, who is with us here today, and Graham Vanderpool will be joining us via Zoom. Darlene Vanpool applied to LPRCA under Ontario Regulation 17806 for the construction of a building in Turkey Point, which is in Norfolk County.
Just a second, to set it into Zoom. And if I could just briefly ask our Zoom participant to confirm that they can see the slideshow, please.
Yes, I can.
Wonderful, thank you.
The application, the scope of the proposed work. The application has been deemed complete for the construction of a structure that includes a boat well, garage, exterior stairs leading to a second story internal space that measures 1,380 square feet with 2 second-story decks. There is an existing garage on the property that will be demolished. Staff are unable to recommend approval of this application. Therefore, a hearing with the Board of Directors is required. The subject lands. On the left, we have the key map that shows the location in green. As you can see, there's Turkey Point, and the area in green, the circle, is the approximate area we're in Turkey Point at the south end where the property is located. The subject land is known as 125 Ordnance Ave in Turkey Point, and the property boundary is outlined in yellow on the right. As indicated, the land contains an existing cottage and a garage. The cottage is on the east side or on the right, and the garage is located on the west side. At 125 Ordnance, the subject property is prone to flooding hazards from Lake Erie, and the entire property is regulated under Ontario Regulation 17806. On your screen or up above is a map of the location and showing the regulated area hatched in red. So as you can see, the majority of Turkey Point is regulated by the Conservation Authority. The limit of the regulation is shown in red. And yeah. For this particular property, the shoreline flooding hazard applies. Just a little chart to show exactly the area that is regulated. As you can see, the Great Lake and then the 100-year water level, that's where they are within, and then the area that is regulated. Just to show that we have jurisdiction over this land for development. The subject land, this is a quick view from Bristol Street, which is a little side road off Ordnance Ave. This shows a picture of the existing garage. The site plan outlined in green is the existing footprint of the single-story garage. Outlined in yellow is the proposed footprint of the existing structure. This structure contains quite a few different elements. So we decided it would be important just to show exactly the components of the structure associated with the size. The first floor contains a boat well, the area around the boat well, which will be concrete, and a 2-car garage. The total floor area is 1,860 square feet. External stairs lead to an internal space on the second floor measuring 1,380 square feet and 2 second-story decks that are accessible through the internal area. The total area of the second floor is 1,756 square feet. Here is the drawings that were submitted as part of the application. This is on page 34 of the agenda package if you want to take a closer look, just showing the view of what the proposed structure would look like. So as you can see, on the east side, the 2 garage doors. On the west side, you have the entrance for the boat well, and then the 2 side views, showing the scale and what the proposed structure will look like when it's complete. On page 32 of our agenda packet, This is the main floor as proposed. As you can see, it is roughly a little over half of it will be a boat slip, and the other half will be a 2-car garage. The second story space will be entered into from external stairs. And it contains a large enclosed area with 2 decks, one at the lakeside looking out and the other at the channel side. So the policy considerations. So any application that is received by staff here, we have to review against applicable policy. The overall intent of our policies is to prevent loss of life, minimize property damage and social discrimination, reduce public and private expenditure for emergency operations, evacuation, restoration, and protection measures, minimize the hazardous and unnecessary development of flood and erosion susceptible shoreline areas, which in future years may require extensive protection measures. One section of our policy is that the risk to public safety is not increased. The size and design of the structure creates an opportunity for habitable space. Any additional units within the floodplain of Lake Erie are a concept that staff cannot support, as there is no safe access in Turkey Point. Safe access means the location where the 100-year flood safe access means locations where the 100-year flood does not exceed 0.8 meters along access routes. The route to enter or to exit Turkey Point is subject to well over a meter of floodwaters, and from this site to the closest road, which is Turkey Point Road, is about 1.9 kilometers. Therefore, residents have no way to exit during a storm event, and emergency services would have a very difficult time entering and exiting the area during a flood event as well. Section 2 of this policy is the susceptibility to natural hazards is not increased or new hazards are created. The overall size of the structure is increased substantially from the existing structure. The structure has been designed to be wet flood-proof, meaning that has been designed to intentionally allow floodwaters to enter and exit the structure while minimizing damages. However, the larger the structure, the greater potential for damages. Staff acknowledge that by nature, boathouses are typically close to the shoreline as they are utilized for the purpose of storing and or docking boats and related equipment. The proximity to the shoreline puts boathouses at an inherent risk to natural hazards, and therefore it is important to ensure the use and scope of the structure is limited to minimize potential risk to life and property. Another section of our policies, when it relates to non-habitable accessory buildings, there is no feasible alternative outside of Lake Erie shoreline hazard. For this site, that is true. The entire property is within the shoreline hazard. This policy is for areas where there might be lands located outside. We would prefer that any development would be outside. In this instant, the policy is met because there is no opportunity to locate outside. Part B is the site is not subject to frequent flooding. This site is subject to frequent flooding. Frequent flooding is defined as within the 25-year storm event. However, staff note that there is no feasible alternative outside of the flood hazard, and it is therefore critical that the size of the proposed use are minimized to reduce the potential for property damage and risk to life. For non-habitable accessory buildings, we have a section of our policy that speaks to the upward size that we would be looking for applications. LPRCA policies place an upward limit on accessory buildings of 100 square meters or 1,080 square feet. Staff have recommended approval of permits for structures that have been slightly larger than 100 square meters, up to 130 square meters, which include the garage space, but with smaller second stories. The application, excluding the boat well, is over double the 100 meters square and proposes a size that is beyond what staff believes is appropriate for an accessory building in an area prone to flooding from Lake Erie. The next part of that policy is there's no opportunity for conversion to habitable space in the future. Given the proposed size and design of the second story, there is concern that additional uses could be included. In staff's opinion, the size and design is not consistent with space that would be utilized for storage. The plans presented show 2 second-story decks with large double doors entering into each. With the increased size of the second story, the overall risk to natural hazards is increased from existing greater than what LPRCA staff deem appropriate for the site and could support. In summary, staff cannot consider the structure to be minor in nature. The size and design create an opportunity for habitable space, which cannot be supported within the floodplain of Lake Erie. The site does not have safe access during times of flooding. The depth of flooding on access route is unsafe, potentially putting both residents and emergency responders' lives at risk. The overall guidance and intent of our policies to minimize potential risk to life and property during natural hazard events. Therefore, staff have proposed this recommendation that the board of directors refuse to grant a permit for the following reasons. The construction of the proposed structure is contrary to the Long Point Region Conservation Authority shoreline policies for development in the Lake Erie flood hazard area. These policies have been implemented to reduce or eliminate preventable risk to life and property from damage. The control of flooding is affected by the development as the overall risk to property damage is increased. The control of flooding is affected by the development, which substantially increases the investment in a flood hazard area that does not have safe access, egress for evacuation or emergency assistance. The control of flooding is affected by the development as a second-story area can be utilized as habitable space and would therefore put additional risk to life and property for both the occupants and emergency personnel and first responders. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Leanne. Does the hearing board have any questions for Leanne? Doug?
Yeah, Leanne, could you go back to that, one drawing where you show the different flood elevations? I think it was way back at the start. You show the 100-year storm and. There, oh,
This one.
just went by it there. That one, yeah. Can you tell me where that building would fit into that? At what level?
So this is just a diagram explaining what the shoreline hazard is. So the entire property is within the flood hazard. So they would be below that 100-year.
Blue line
lake level.
below?
Yes, the majority of Turkey Point is within the flood hazard of the lake.
The 100-year lake level.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. I now call on the applicant and our agent to speak to the application.
Hi, good evening. My name is Darlene Vanderpool, and I'm here tonight with my husband, Dave, and my engineer, Len Gerard. My designer, Graham Van Den Heuvel from Stonecrest Engineering is with us via Zoom tonight. Unfortunately, he had an accident on the weekend that required emergency surgery, so he's unable to attend tonight in person. That's why he's here via Zoom. We're here this evening regarding our project that we have proposed for our cottage at 125 Ordnance Ave in Turkey Point. This project is a combined boathouse and garage with storage above. We started this project with Graham about 2 years ago. And after a number of delays at the county level, last May, we were successful with our application for a minor variance for this project with the Committee of Adjustments for Norfolk County. Since that time, Graham has been working with the staff at LPRCA regarding flood proofing, which was resolved this past January. And at that time, staff indicated that we would still have to attend a meeting here with the board of directors for the LPRCA. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear that we have no intention of living in the storage area. This issue was addressed at the hearing for the minor variance, and it was a condition upon which the minor variance was granted. The electrical and plumbing in this structure will be minimal. There will be no washroom. Dave and I are retiring from farming and downsizing at home in Langton. We need storage space in Turkey Point to consolidate the things that we want to keep. These include antique furniture collection from my parents, Dave's sizable collection of tobacco signs and other tobacco memorabilia, and our gym equipment. We have operated 2 businesses, farming businesses in Norfolk County for the last 40 years. CRA and HRSDC require that I keep all these files for at least 7 years. And at home now, I can tell you, I have a small room in my basement full of files from ceiling to floor. So those files would also be housed in that upper storage unit. The storage will also be for things that now we bring home each fall, because the existing garage that's there floods. So everything that's in there, every fall we bring home, and we're hoping with the second story storage space that we won't have to do that anymore. And some of the things that we bring home every year are, we bring home 4 kayaks, 2 canoes, we have a paddle boat, we have 2 patio dining sets, patio lounge furniture set, an outdoor fire table, we've got boating equipment, fishing equipment, 6 bicycles, a wagon, beach toys, beach chairs, everything that's in there we bring home, because that garage does flood right now. It didn't flood this past winter, but it has flooded back there in the past. And by removing the existing garage and building this new structure, we'll actually create more green space, because the boathouse portion will be covering the existing boat well. I've got some pictures along. I think you got them in your packages, but if I could just pass them out, just to show you exactly what the existing garage looks like that we have now. And here's the boathouse that's right beside ours. And this boathouse, interestingly enough, also has a second story. It's actually longer than the one that we're proposing and taller than the one that we're proposing. I've also printed off a number of other pictures from similar buildings in Turkey Point. Some of them are just boathouses, some of them are boathouses and garage combinations like we're proposing. All of them have a second story upper unit. So if I could just pass these along to everyone. And I will turn over the meeting now to Bram from Stonecrest Engineering.
Elaine, I hope everyone can hear me in this configuration.
Yep, I think that's good, Bram.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, before Len comes up to speak, I just want to speak to a few of the technical items that I've helped Darlene with. I want to thank the LPRCA staff for putting together this report. And yeah, I have a few notes that I wanted just to go through and highlight for everyone. So like Darlene mentioned, the project started in the fall of 2021, and it was deferred twice with working with county staff when we were dealing with the minor variance. And that was specifically due to some of the unclarity surrounding the definition of usable floor space specifically. So one of the items I think is to speak to that and to address that a bit more. Like Darlene mentioned, our engineers have worked diligently to ensure a safe structure, to work with the floodproofing measures, to look at hydrostatic pressure, to look at a few of these elements. But I wanted to just spend a few minutes to look at usable floor area specifically. Currently, the values that are depicted before you are higher because there's no ability to recognize an upper storage or a unoccupied space or mechanical spaces or similar occasional uses. And another element that has been adding some complexity for me as I've been putting forth these applications is when you start to combine a boat lift structure with a residential accessory structure. So in the way the county bylaws are written, a residential accessory structure itself would be permitted to have 100 square meter building area, and the boathouse would be permitted to have a 56 square meter usable floor area as 2 independent structures. In our case, of course, we are combining these uses, but in discussion with county staff, and after deferring the application for a minor variance twice, due to some of these interpretation challenges, we decided to proceed with an inflated usable area, and we explained this to the Committee of Adjustment at the time. At this point, I want to present something similar to the board to see if where there are areas where this usable area can be reduced. So one of the items to look at, and I circulated a minor variance application reasoning document, and I hope that everyone's had a chance to glance at that briefly. But one of the items in there is looking at the definition itself. And there are some exemptions listed that wouldn't be counted towards usable floor area. And one of those that I pointed out to county staff at the time at the minor variance was a detached garage. So it's interesting to note that for vehicle storage for garages, these can be exempted potentially, but boat slips may not. And so this was a discussion I had with county staff at the time on this interpretation. And this is some of the driving reasons why these values are higher. So instead of creating two independent structures, we wanted to combine these. And so this is the reason why we've come up with some of these numbers, but it's good to note that initially when we submitted for a minor variance, we came in with a much lower total usable floor area. And so this discussion was had with the Committee of Adjustment and explained. So it was under that premise that we were granted approval and under the condition that the upper area would be utilized for storage. So when we look at our specific example, and there was a really good chart that the staff had prepared under the breakdown of all the areas. When we look at that specifically, we can see that if we were able to exempt the garage, for example, exempt the boat slip and look at just the practical area that it was usable on the main floor, it would be indeed much lower. In recent applications with the county, I've been able to also exempt enclosed decks as well upstairs. So final configurations are coming potentially more in line with about 22 to 106 square meters on the main floor, depending on how this is defined, and 120 square meters of storage space above. Again, it's interesting to note that in the definition, basements used for storage, for example, in the county definition are exempt from usable floor space. So I think this is a matter of looking at usable floor area and how it's defined, because the overall area of the boathouse and the structure itself is in line with other structures in close proximity. And these are some of the challenges that we ran into. And ultimately we decided to explain this to the Committee of Adjustment. And this is how we ended up with our approval with that specific committee. So that's really just a really high level overview of what I've had to kind of go through. I'm dealing with another application right now that's of similar matter, so I'm looking for clarity on this as well. And all of these items are just a good practical example how it becomes difficult when you have about 8 different zoning references that all have to establish some sort of relief in these scenarios when you start combining residential accessory and boathouse structures together. And I think on the basis of some of this and some of the technicalities surrounding this, I'm hoping that the board members can get a sense that the actual usable floor area of this proposed structure is in reality much less than what is being depicted. I think I will be available for questions if anyone has any further questions on our design and how we work through this. And I'll turn it over to Len now to present his thoughts.
Greetings, everyone. I'm just going to go through the general summary that I provided in the original submission and try to wrap up the entire package here. Number one, Norfolk County Committee of Adjustment already has approved minor variance. And it's restricting the height to 7 meters, which was applied for. And it calls it a usable floor area of 355.3 square meters. And as Graham just talked about, the actual boathouse itself is for a boat. There's no, if you look at the plan, did we bring up the plan of the boathouse itself? I do have a copy here if we can circulate it. That's it. But it's, I think that refer to that as well. You can see that the existing garage is coming down and more than half of that garage is eliminated. It's going to create more green space. The structure itself is a combination of a boathouse and a garage. If we go to the floor plan on the lower level, that one there, you'll see there's hardly any room around the outside of the boat slip other than for moving towards the boat. In the garage, there's hardly any more space than just for 2 cars. There's also a riding lawnmower and some other equipment for maintenance of the property that has to be stored there. There's no living space there at all. And if we go to the upper floor level, that's what seems to be like a large space. It's about 127 or 128 square meters. The two decks are small. They're more for lounging perhaps, but they're not really going to be used much more than things that you can't get up there on the stairway into the second level. You can also get them on this side over here, the right side. You can put things up there and get them through the double doors. The reason for that is also aesthetics, to make the thing look reasonable compared to some of the pictures you've seen. There's some pretty nice developments that have been done in Turkey Point and Long Point where I live, and I deal with the water. I had water in my garage just recently. I'm still pumping. But I've designed the place so that it's not ruined. When the water goes down, I've used materials that won't be destroyed, which is one of the topics about being circulated here, that the policy of the board is to eliminate property damage if possible. And so if you use the right materials, the water comes up, the water goes down. If you use the right materials, there won't be much damage. And this structure is like a bomb shelter. But it's been well designed because it was mandated by the board's people and also the building code. That internal area for storage is about 128 square meters. And there's good reason for the double doors on both ends, natural ventilation. And there's minimum amount of ventilation and mechanical ventilation as opposed, and no plumbing as mentioned by Darlene. And there's no electrical below the flood level. Everything has been done in that fashion as prescribed by the board's requirements. And also in good measure through the building code for safety. If you look at the pictures and you look at the list that I have in point 10, there's many structures. I can't even count them. Just in 500 meters, there are all these that I've listed in point 10. They are all two stories. They are all larger actually than the 56 meter minimum if it's a boathouse. And a lot of them are larger than the 100 square meters if it's combined structure or another secondary structure. And you can see also that some of the percentages of lot coverage are also higher than the 10% that's recommended. Like Darlene said, the Vanderpools have been lifelong residents. They've collected a lot of stuff. They're downsizing what they have And we all know what that's like as we get older. I've done it myself. You got no place to put it, or you've got to get rid of it. They would prefer to keep it for their family and store it. And on the second floor, it's dry. It's going to be dry. Where some of it is stored now on the lower level, that property floods and they can sustain damage. And also it's not as secure. It'll be much more secure on the second level. And it'll be kept dry and humidity controlled, especially the government records. We don't want to lose those things. Now, also, they're gonna keep all this stuff. And they've got 2 farms to dispose of and 4 other farming operations where they can store things. That's all gonna go away when they completely downsize. And so everything they want to keep has got to go up there. And I don't think that space is good enough. It's not big enough. When you're talking about usable space, in the cottage they own, there's no basement. It's hard to have a basement anywhere in Turkey Point and Long Point. So you'll lose that storage space. That second level becomes a basement, which in normal building code requirements isn't counted as floor area. You don't count it. Just like you don't count the garage if it's attached, which Bram had pointed out in his discussion. So we've got a lot of things to store. Mrs. Vanderpool has said they have no intention of converting this space to anything that's livable. There's no plumbing, there's minimal electrical, minimal heating and ventilating, and even air conditioning. So you have to rely on them to be telling you the truth, which I believe they are. And they have all this stuff. They do have it. And they can show you that they have all of this stuff stored somewhere else. And it has to go somewhere. They want to keep it and pass it on to their family. In conclusion, I'd just like to pass out just 3 sheets. One shows the existing cottage at 125 ordinance with the existing garage and the new boathouse superimposed over it in a dark line. And there are 3 other cottages, specifically 68 and 70 clubhouse. And 149 ordinance. In addition, I also have an aerial photograph of each one of those. And you can physically see by comparing the 2 pictures of each one with 125 ordinance and the proposed boathouse. And this particular one is 149 ordinance, which is the largest of the 3. If you just hold the 2 pictures together side by
If you
side.
can just hold a minute. I think you need to ask them, if this is new information,
That
and
hasn't
if
been
the
presented in the
committee
past.
wants to consider
Well,
it or not.
Those other locations are showing point numbers 10 in my
Are they?
submission.
Okay,
So, but are they, is that already in these documents?
that's what he was saying, that
It
The
is
only
in-
thing that's new there is the aerial photograph of 149, 68, and 70 clubhouse. It's just a physical comparison, just to look at the dark line of 125 ordinance and what's proposed compared to the size, physical size of the boathouse on that particular one is 149 ordinance.
Gerard, we're not gonna look at that because that's new information. We have the information here in front of us that was submitted, right?
Okay, if that's the way it is.
Thank you.
But in essence, it just points out that there are certain combined structures, boathouse and garage or similar auxiliary building that are bigger than the one proposed. And they have a full second floor as well. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I am quite available and open the floor to the board.
Does the staff have any questions for the applicant and or their agent? No questions. Does the applicant and or their agent have any questions for the Conservation Authority staff?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board to either staff or the applicant or agent? From the board, yes.
Yeah,
Joanne,
thank you, Chair. I just have a question, I guess, for staff. We do have quite a few pictures here. Some are 3-story buildings. You know, and they look like they're living in them. A lot of these pictures, and I've been to Turkey Point and I've seen the development that has occurred in the last 10 years. So I guess my question is, it sounds like they're not living in this structure. It sounds like they're using it for their kayaks and personal items. So I'm just curious to know how these all occurred, but they're having the struggle. So I guess because I'm new, I just need to know what's, like, I know you said that there's emergency issues, emergency EMS can't get there, but then they couldn't get next door either. Thank you.
So through the chair, I think it's important to note that some of these structures in Turkey Point in general were built before 2006. Prior to 2006, LPRCA did not have regulations. So any of those buildings did not require permission from our office. There are some instances where last summer, some of our staff actually pulled through all the permits that we've issued for accessory buildings in Long Point and Turkey Point to see what have we approved since we've had regulations in 2006. These structures, when they were on their own, everything we found, all our permits that we have issued, including the garage space in the second story, was 134 meters square. That is based off the plans that we received and that we were given permits for. There are some images in here that, for one example, 31C Cedar, which is page 77. When I pulled the permit, the plans show that the one section of this garage is actually a loft. So it's supposed to be cathedral ceilings up, and then they have windows on the side. So what looks like it might be livable space in this permit, it might be a good opportunity for staff to go down and make sure that is what has been built there in the plans that we received and that we provided a permit for. It's actually open space. So what something looks like from the outside and what it looks like from the inside, it's a little bit different sometimes. We have access to the permit, which include all the plans, and that's the information that we look through.
with further questions? Doug?
Yeah, just, thank you, Mr. Caroline, through you to Leanne. All those pictures we had passed around here a minute ago, there are a lot of the shows the 2-story, 3-story. Would they all fall within that flood area that you showed? Remember I asked you that question about how many of them were in the 100-year flood? Would many of them be in that 100-year flood that are existing already?
They all would be except that 31C Cedar. Every other one is within that flood area, within 500 meters of where we are located. They're on one of the channels, so it's either on Macaulay, Clubhouse, Cedar, or Ordnance. All of those are, except 31 Cedar, which is at the other end.
So those,
So just to build on that, there are very limited sections of Turkey Point that are not within the 100-year floodplain, but they are still regulated because there's wetland and there's also a very steep slope that goes up. So I looked through a lot of these and tried to cross-reference permits and when they were given. I believe the majority of these would have required permission from our office. And like I said earlier, if it was prior to 2006, they didn't need permission from us.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Leanne. If you look in our agenda package on the bottom of page 48, that one stands out in my mind. We vacation in Church Point regularly, and that is a monument of a house that's been built. So the issue, Leanne, is it that this structure that's being proposed is an auxiliary structure as opposed to being the main residence? Is that where the main crux of the problem lies? Or because, you know, the one that's on page 48 there clearly is much larger than what you proposed here.
Yeah, it takes up 90% of the lot coverage on that one.
Right, so we have different policy requirements depending on what you're doing. If you are building a vacation home, like we call them in Turkey Point, you have a set of policies. A number of years ago, so because they're in a flood hazard, the direction of the province is to limit the investment, limit the scale of development. So in our policies for this area, you need to have safe access if you want to redevelop. So redevelopment means you are going to say you have 1,000 square feet. You are allowed in a minor addition, which is 500 square feet. So if you're going up and beyond that, we consider that to be redevelopment, and that requires safe access. A number of years ago, I believe it was 2017, there was a motion passed by this board that deemed the safe access to be satisfied in Long Point and Turkey Point, because there was some work on a Norfolk safety strategy. So what would have gone to the board as a hearing for those large scale developments through that motion are being approved. So for this application, it's an accessory building and we have size requirements for that.
Stuart?
Thanks, John. I don't have a question. I have a bunch of comments. And then probably by the end of my comments, you'll probably realize which one I'm leaning on this application, but I kind of did a list. I'm kind of just going to go through and I don't need staff to rebuttal. I'm just going to give some examples. So the four recommendations.
If I just state a point of order. I'm not sure whether this is the time that we deliberate. And the comments are deliberation. Not sure whether they are appropriate at this time.
They should come afterwards.
So perhaps you can make a ruling on that if there are no questions. But if there's comments that should be held in abeyance until that opportunity arises in the hearing.
I'll reserve those comments.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Robert. I don't know, you both tuck your hand at the same time. Go ahead.
Being the older guy, I will speak first. I do have a question to the applicants. And the question is this through the chair. The staff report lists 4 recommendations, or in the staff recommendation, it lists 4 reasons for not approving the application. One of the reasons refers to safe access and egress. Before you touched on 3 of them, but you did not touch on safe access and egress, evacuation and emergency assistance. The staff did allude to a resolution that was passed in 2017. I recall that. I think I was the one that made that motion. So if you could just comment on number 3 reason, it would help me to before.
Safe access and egress. Well, I guess we would be in the same boat as everybody else in Turkey Point, for safety. If there is no way that they can't get to our location at 125 ordinance, there's another 50 cottages past me. So, I mean, I think everybody's in the same boat. Well, Turkey Point's actually kind of fortunate because there are two access roads, the old hill and the new hill. And, you know, with the floodproofing that is required, like Len alluded to, it's built like a bomb shelter now that if there's gonna have to be, and plus it's gonna have to be, that lot's gonna have to be raised significantly. So hopefully even the bottom part, the garage will no longer ever flood again. And I know, I showed our designs to a builder and he said, I'll tell you right now, if there's ever a flood in Turkey Point, get to the top of that structure. That's where you're gonna be the safest. So.
So,
I don't know, Len, if you have any other comment?
I might have a comment too, Len, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
So just to speak to the member of the board through the chair, one of the other elements that we will be proceeding with post this point are building permits through Norfolk County through Part 9 of the building code, one of which will speak to access to structures. And so it will inevitably become a building code provision, building permit provision, of course, but current access is already there to the space. We're suggesting to have a non-occupiable space, and we've mentioned previously, we've worked with our engineers to satisfy the floodproofing and structural safety elements of the structure as well. So, you know, back to the usable floor area discussion, you know, when you interpret it in a way that recognizes the exemptions, I think there is a way to get that usable area down quite significantly so that it'll address some of these concerns. But to access specifically, that would be my response.
Peter, you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the engineer. The portion of the boat well is indicated to be used as boat storage as well. So I would assume there's going to be a lift mechanism in that portion of the building.
Bram?
Yes, that's correct.
And so does that lift mechanism take up any of the floor space of the upper level, or is it completely contained within the boat garage?
That's a really good point. You know, when we first applied for the minor variance, we actually suggested that the upstairs be a horizontal service space. There is quite a bit of building code language that permits non-occupiable space not to be counted as usable floor area. But within the definitions through zoning, those alleviations aren't there unless you exempt a garage and a basement storage and apply that to the structure, in which case things look a lot better. So mechanical spaces are exempt in the current definitions in the Norfolk County bylaw. And so that it depends on the kind of lift structure that the owners will be purchasing. And so contingent upon that, there could be mechanical space, but it's all prefaced on the type of lift, I would say.
Are there any other? Yes.
Thank you, through you,
Rainey,
Mr.
go
Chair. Just a quick question, if you don't mind. This is my first hearing for Long Point, so I'm curious as to the process. Is a notice circulated to the neighbors? And if it is, have any comments been received?
Yes, a notice was circulated. No, oh, sorry, a notice for the minor variance,
Yes.
addressing the three issues, the
So,
height,
I
the size.
just
and
want to
usable
do a
floor space.
friendly kind of reminder. The minor variance lot coverage municipal process. That is a public process where third parties are allowed to provide comments. Our process relates to our policies and our tests under the Conservation Authorities Act. It is not a public process, therefore no circulations are provided, and comments from members are not part of our recommendation.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Hearing none. I have a motion for the hearing board to move into deliberation that the LPRCA hearing board does now enter into closed session to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals, local planning appeal tribunal affecting the authority. Can I have a mover in a second? Peter and Rainey. Are there any opposed? Thank you. We are now going into closed session. Okay, I'd like to advise Darlene Vanderpool that the request has been approved.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the board. Looking forward to starting this. Thank you so much.
5-minute break.
No, just like to get out of the hearing board.
We need one more board.
Yep. One more motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors is now adjourned from sitting as a hearing board. I have a mover, Tom and Rainey. Any opposed? We're gonna call 5-minute recess.
Carrie?
Thank you very much.
Carrie, sorry. We're back in session. And we're dealing with number 5 on our agenda, our regular agenda. That the minutes of the LPRCA Annual General Meeting held March 3rd, 2023, be adopted as circulated. Can I have a mover and a second? Doug? And Shelley Ann, and those in favor? I'm sorry, I should ask, any discussion? Any corrections or? No, okay. So that's carried. Business arising for the previous minutes, there's none. Review of committee, there's none. Correspondence, none. Planning, there's 20 applications. Can you speak to that?
LPRC staff have approved 20 applications for development since the annual general meeting in February. The report summarizes the location and nature for each development application. And we have provided a map as usual at the end of the report. Visual of within our watershed and commission has been granted. If you have any questions, I can go ahead.
Are there any questions? Yes, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, to Leanne. The one I was looking at was Bingle Creek, municipal drain, and it's, I know the history behind it, and, I'm surprised it's here now, like, it hasn't been here. Is this the first time it's come to you? It's been here like 50 times, I imagine.
Through the chair, there has, yes, I'm also aware of the very long history of Dingle Creek. I'm not sure when the original permit was issued. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago that our permit only good for 2 years, so our permit had expired. So the county had applied for a new permit, the exact same work. So we issued a permit for that.
And is it a different engineering company now? I think they had trouble that way too, did they not?
Through the chair, I'm not sure exactly who's doing the construction. My understanding was all the plans were from the original engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, one comment with respect to agenda page 92. It's application 43/23. I believe that should read the Tisdale Side Road. That's the name there, okay? And moving on to agenda page 94. Just wondered if you could give us a background on the proposed work for LPRCA 51/23. 2093 Lakeshore Road, Baldwin County, the installation of upgrades to the sewage system. Where is that for these new tanks? Is that a municipal project or?
Through the chair, I don't see every application that crosses through, but I do know this one was for the Blue Heron Trailer Park.
Okay.
So I believe this would be sewage system for all the campers to be able to dump into. If you want more
No,
information.
that makes sense. It's
Okay.
trailer park.
Okay.
And the one at 52/23, the Queensway Drive East, Norfolk County, Simcoe, the slag removal, where is that exactly?
Through the chair, this is the property in behind, so it's right east of the old Zellers. The entrance is off of Queensway, I believe, just east of Audio Ave.
Okay, yeah.
I think I have the right. Yeah, I believe it's right in there. There's a driveway that goes back and then the land's kind of open up beside the old Zellers.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions for Leanne? Seeing none, I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the section 28 regulation for permits report dated April 5th, 2023 as information only one correction of site to side. Mover and seconder. Doug and Tom. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor? That's carried. So now we'll move down to new business, number 10A, and that is general manager report, Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairs. So in the report, I noted that we had to send another report to the NECP by April 1st, and we did do that to be compliant under our transition plan that the board approved, and this is relating to our program and services listing and the new regulations. Our flood forecast and warning, we actually today, we had a flood warning, we had issued another, increased it to a flood warning, but today we did terminate that, and it's just a condition safety statement, as we did not get as much rain as in the forecast, and the rivers have started to recede, but they're still at top of bank, and there's still some safety in our watershed. The Deer Creek dam concrete repair project was completed, and we have reconciled, and we have finalized the submission to WECI for the funding. And as I noted there, we did get WECI funding after 3 applications. So Norfolk County will be receiving a check back for $80,065 because we did collect a special levy when we didn't think we were going to receive WECI. So Aaron's been in touch with their finance department. So we'll be proceeding on sending that back. We're working on getting our campgrounds backed up with seasonal employees, and they'll be starting next Tuesday. Not a full complement, but the supervisors and assistants will be starting, and then our campgrounds open May 1st. I'm just looking here to see the rest of the items. The one item that I noted there for the Hemlock Woolly alleged pilot project, we applied for this research project and been selected. So staff's going to go for a training session to learn about how to do the monitoring and install the DNA traps, but we'll be doing that down in the Jake's track in the Holman County. I think it's about 46 acres that we have there. And there has been recently, this bug has been found in Hamilton area. And again, it was just released. There was another area found in the Hamilton area like this week. So this is moving very quickly, and so it's kind of prudent that we have we start to be part of the research. And we do have all the trees marked and plotted within our own our own lands. Staff have gone out and plotted that, so we know where all the hemlock trees are. But just because of the location and it migrating this way, the Jake's track seemed to make sense to start to do some research there. So that will be interesting. I'll keep the board updated on that. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Judy from the board? Seeing none. Then I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the general manager report for March 2023 as information. I need a mover and seconder, Dave. And Ring, Shelley Ann. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Okay, we'll move to the ecological. Carrie. I have a very good board secretary that keeps me on the straight and narrow. Have you noticed? Ecological survey for selected LPRCA properties. That's yours, Judy.
Yes, thank you. So in this report, I just wanted to bring it forward. We are engaging with a consultant to continue with the work to do our ecological surveys. And, the quote came in at 24,300. We only received one quote. The other, we just sent it to 3 consultants, and they did respond back and indicate they would not be submitting a bid. One had a lot, just too much work, and the other one said that they just didn't feel they could be competitive because this is our 4th year with, this firm, Natural Resource Solutions, Inc. And, it is a very good price, and we are very happy with their work. So I just wanted to bring it forward to the board to, for their information, that will be proceeding and continuing doing the ecological surveys on the properties listed in the background information there.
Any
And
questions on that for Judy? Seeing none, that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the report as information. A mover and a seconder, Rainey and Shelley Ann. Those in favor? That's carried. So the tractor tender, yours again, Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, we put the tender out and it closed, and we had, 4 bidders, submit quotes for the, small tractor. And we are recommending for the board to consider, approving the purchase from Farm Power Equipment for the Mahindra. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but it's a 2638 for a price of $35,983.52. That's including HST. So it met, all the conditions, that we put in the RFP for the specs. If anyone has any questions.
Any questions about that tender? Yes, Mike.
Yes, where is the farm power equipment located?
They're located on Highway 3 between here and Delhi.
Okay, that's one I drive by all the time. And what is the warranty? Are all these based on the same warranty, or do they have different warranty?
The warranties did vary a bit. That specific one, the warranty for that tractor, it has 7 years. I gotta think about this, but I just have here, it has 7 years warranty, but I'm not sure on what part. I think that's might have to print it off.
That'd be
Most of-
powertrain.
On the powertrain?
Powertrain.
Yeah, there was more information, and I didn't print off the other email, but, because I had them clarify exactly what that was on. But it actually was a good warranty.
And how do we dispose of our former equipment?
We will be doing the way we did it last year. We went to using, Gov Deals. And it was online, but we were able to keep our equipment at our site in Waterford. And, conducted the online auction from there, and people had to pick up from there, which saved us having to float everything. We used to take it to Brian's auction in Pushlink by Guelph. And sometimes that was a bit of a logistic nightmare to get things up there, and it's expensive to float things, so that was very successful. We're we'll be putting a list together and doing an auction, probably not this spring, but later on towards the fall.
Any other questions for Judy? So I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors accepts the tender submitted by Farm Power Equipment for the purchase of one diesel front loader tractor, 2023 Mahindra 2638 for $35,983.52, excluding HST. I have a mover and a seconder. Shelley Ann and Mike. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? That's good, thank you. Okay, now we have the septic disposal service request for proposal, and Aaron, you're gonna speak to that.
Thanks.
So we issued an RFP for septic services at our 5 campgrounds. We sent it out to 4 vendors with 3 proposals on there. We've listed the pricing per part, per load. And as you'll see in the chart, 3 were the low service for stealth environmental and 2 for baseline septic. In 2022, the overall price for septic services on average went up 9%. This past year, they increased 0 or flat overall. So I think the competitive process was successful this year in the bids. We're estimating that this will come in within budget or around budget, sorry. Thanks.
Any questions for Aaron regarding the septic disposal services request for proposal? Yes, Sally.
Where is Stealth Environmental located?
So that is actually Bill's Septic, better known as Bill's Septic, that is Simcoe area, but I think they're located in Simcoe and Port Dover.
Someone else have a question, Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have we used this firm before? Like we have those septic,
Yes, we have.
so we're okay with their service.
Yes, we have.
Any further questions? Okay, I have a motion of the 2023 contract for septic services at Bacchus CA and Deer Creek CA be awarded to Bayside Septic Services.
Yeah.
Bayside Septic Services 2012 Incorporated. And that the 2023 contract for septic services at Haldeman CA, Norfolk CA, and Waterford North CA be awarded to Stealth Environmental Incorporated. Yes, Tom,
Are you looking for a move?
yes, mover, Tom and Chris. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? That's carried, thank you. So now we go to the Riverine Flood Hydrology Study, RFP Consulting Services. And Leanne, you're gonna speak for that?
Yes, I will. Through the chair, LPRCA staff issued a request for proposal for a consultant to develop a HEC-HNS hydraulic model for the entire watershed. The model will develop return period flows, regional storm event simulation, river stage, and timing will also be able to be determined from this model. LPRCA staff in August of 2022 applied to the Flood Hazard Implementation and Mapping Program, also known as FIM, for funding to support the model. LPRCA staff was successful in our application, and the program will fund 50% of the total cost up to $120,000. In the application, $100,000 has been budgeted to complete the model, and $20,000 has been budgeted for contract staff to aid in the completion of the project. A requirement of this funding is that the project is completed by the end of February of 2024. LPRCA staff issued the RFP on February 15th of this year on the Bids and Tenders website and also on LPRCA's website. 9 proposals were received by the March 20th deadline. All the proposals were reviewed and evaluated independently by an assessment team of 3 staff on the quality of the proposal, the experience of the consulting team, the approach to the study, the cost, and the schedule. 6 of the proposals met the RFP requirements, and the proposals are listed on page 107 of the agenda. Based on the results of the independent evaluation, staff recommend that the proposal submitted by Matrix Solutions be accepted at a cost of $92,506, excluding HFT. And we've also added in $1,624 per additional meeting if that is required. This proposal ranked the highest by the assessment team. One of the reasons for that is determining the hydrology for our watershed is a challenging project. We have a combination of gauged and ungauged watersheds with varying soil types and different levels of development within. Our watershed has a total of 17 gauges, 7 are owned by LPRCA and 10 are owned by Water Survey of Canada. Staff has found significant issues with the Lynn River gauge, which is owned by Water Survey of Canada. Previous efforts to fix the issue have been unsuccessful. And the RFP required the consultant to propose a methodology for addressing these challenges. The matrix proposal most aligned with the project requirements, and their approach will allow us to use the model for multiple purposes, including enabling future hazard mapping, flood forecasting, and warning and emergency management. The approved LPRCA capital budget includes funding for this project of $120,000. FIP will cover $60,000, and LPRCA's matching funds were approved from the capital levy reserve. The proposal from Matrix is within budget, and staff recommend that we proceed with retaining Matrix solutions for this study. Do you have any questions? I can answer them for you.
Are there any questions, Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Leanne. So you call this a model, and I'm trying to get my head around what that means actually. If I talk about a model tractor, it's a physical thing. So are we talking about a report that we're going to be able to apply to different scenarios? Or is this a computer program or an app, or what is this thing?
It is a computer model. So basically, this is not my area of strong suit, but the engineers in the office will be able to use this, and any consultant who is doing work in our watershed, this would be something that they can use to understand the hydrology and how everything works in our watershed. So it's a computer-based program that will show us exactly how everything flows on gauges and celebrations.
Any further questions? Okay, I have a motion. The LPRCA Board of Directors approved retaining Matrix Solutions Incorporated for engineering services to complete a hydrology model for the LPRCA watershed at a cost of $92,506, exclusive of HST, plus $1,624 per additional meeting if required. Mover and a seconder. Rainey and Doug. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Thus carried. Okay, we are at Ontario Wetland Evaluation System. Leanne, you're up.
LPRCA staff would like to bring to the attention of the board some recent changes to the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System. The acronym for this is OWES. OWES is an evaluation system that assesses the significance of a wetland. In support of Ontario's Housing Action Plan through Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, the ministry consulted on changes to the evaluation system. Staff provided comments through the Environmental Registry of Ontario, expressing concerns regarding the proposed changes. The ministry assessed all the information that was given to them through the registry, and I think they needed a couple of little clarifications, but these changes came into effect on January 1st of 2023. In the report, we've highlighted a couple of key changes and some potential impacts. One of those will be wetland complexing has been eliminated. This has the potential to decrease the significance of smaller wetlands that are adjacent to larger ones, could put them at risk of being negatively impacted by land use practices. Our regulation limits could also change if smaller adjacent wetlands are no longer considered part of the wetland. Another change is the approval authority. In the past, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry had to review and accept any assessment. That is no longer required. They do not need to require or approve review or approve the evaluation. It's considered complete once submitted to the planning authority having jurisdiction over the area. So that is one big question mark I still kind of have. As of course, municipalities look at wetlands from a planning perspective under the Planning Act, but we also do as well under our regulation. So who is the planning authority having jurisdiction over the area is the question that I have. Is that us? Is that the municipality? I'm unsure right now. Potential of impacting the wetland significance if completed evaluations are not subject to that second party review, which was normally done by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And also there may be disagreements between whether an area is wetland or not, and whether a permit from the Conservation Authority is required or not. It also conflict with staff who are always trained, the opinion of the wetland. So those are the changes that are made, and we're gonna keep kind of digging to find out some answers and exactly how that applies to us and what we might see. We can report on that once I have more information.
Any questions for Leanne? Being none, I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the summary of changes to the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System as information. I need a mover and a seconder. Peter and Chris. Any further discussion? Those in favor? That's carried. So we have the 2023 watershed report card. Leanne, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, I will be. So LPRCA staff have completed the 2023 watershed report card, and a copy of it has been provided to you following this report. The watershed report cards are a tool developed through the collaboration of Conservation Ontario, all 36 conservation authorities, and provincial and federal agencies to report on watershed. The report card assigns a grade for forest cover, surface water quality, groundwater quality, based off a standardized grading system, A to F. The report card is issued every 5 years, and we report on our 6 sub-watersheds. So if you want to take a look at the report, surface water quality was given a C grade. And I want to give a little disclaimer to some of these. The criteria throughout Ontario is the same. So we're an agricultural zone area is assessed for forest cover the same as an area in Northern Ontario. So what is, I think, what forest cover is a C. But again, we're being compared and using the same standards as maybe an area that has in Northern Ontario. So surface water quality was given a C, forest conditions was given a C, groundwater quality was given an A, and wetland cover was given a D. These report cards are not reporting on our performance, but rather a snapshot of conditions within a specific watershed region and provide key information to where staff can focus restoration efforts. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Any questions for Leanne? About this report card? Yes, Mike.
Yes, Leanne, to increase our Long Point profile, is there any chance there could be some press release put out on this?
Here, we can speak internally. We did, as part of World Water Day, which was on March 22nd, this is when all the CAs released it. I don't believe we did an official kind of press release, but we did put it on our website and made it one of the main things, new pop-up, but I believe that that's a request of the board. We can look at that internally.
Thank you.
Is that sufficient, Mike?
Yeah, I do. I know we haven't got Zach here anymore for communication, but you know, I thought this is good information to go out, and our news media is pretty well eliminated locally from what I gathered. So I don't know how you get this information out unless it's on social media.
Any further questions for Leanne? I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives a watershed report. I'm sorry.
Just one.
Sorry,
Sorry.
go ahead.
That's okay. I just see that Andy Coke saying to Stony Creek. We've got a D right across the board here. That because the data hasn't been submitted, or is that because we're that poor at recovery of our surface water quality and wetland cover and such?
We're good chair. Yeah, it's definitely, like I was speaking about earlier, we just have different soil conditions in our watershed. So where there's certain areas that have a lot of wetland, over there in the clay plain, there isn't as much wetland. I know that for groundwater quality, yeah, we have insufficient data for that. So once we keep continuing to sample these, we'll be able to store like gain a base of information that we were able to assess it on. Yeah, historically, Nanticoke, Sandus, Stony Creek, just based on the conditions of the soil and just the topography, it generally isn't home to a lot of wetlands or forest cover. It's pretty heavy agricultural land.
Okay, thank you.
Peter?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, that there's good news in this story right now that as of tonight, given soil type in Haldeman, they have 100% wetland cover right now.
Right.
Duly noted.
Test now.
Any further questions for Leanne regarding the watershed report card? Then I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Rainey and Tom. Those in favor? That's carried. We are now adjourned.